What's going on, guys and gals? Chris, the Bonafide Hustler, coming to you live from the inside of my office. Today on the show, I'm going to be showing you how you can make easy money flipping bikes. And yes, most of the bikes I flip, in fact, 99% of them will make it to a local market. So it doesn't involve eBay or anything complicated like that. We're going to get to the show here in 1 second. Anyways, what's up, guys? Bonafide Hustler here, and I, on a part-time basis, am flipping things that I find from garage sales, estate sales, yard sales, flea markets, pawn shops, swap meets, big box stores, and thrift stores. I'm putting it on places like eBay, Amazon, Craigslist, my antique booth, and consignment stores in town. I'm one of the owners of the Green Room University. Go check it out. Second link down below. But in today's show, we're going to be talking about how you can make money flipping bikes. It's a lot of fun, and a lot of times, in fact, every single time that I've ever flipped a bike, with the exception of 2 times, I have actually, they've been final transactions, right? If you've ever dealt with FBA or eBay or anything like that, a lot of times you can get returns, you can get something, scammed out of your money, you can get things returned to you from Amazon and it's broken, it's not the condition that you sent it in. One of the distinct advantages with selling bicycles is that it's pretty much one and done. Like, once you sell it, it's done, you make the big money, and it's a lot of fun. So anyways, yeah, that's pretty much what is going on, and I should have a pretty special offer for you guys at the end of the show as well. So anyways, let's talk about these bikes. How to make easy money. I'm going to be doing some really cool screen shares with you guys. So let me back up my pictures, and I'm going to take you through a bunch of bikes, and yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So okay, so this is basically, let me go do a screen share and I'll get you on the first bike, and that way I will, start training you guys on what to look for. And I try to get a plethora of bikes here, not a ton of different ones. I didn't want to blow your mind, but essentially a plethora being, at least 10 decent ones, and pretty different from one another for the most part. So let's go into the screen share and let me know if you can see this. I want to give it about 30 seconds. And let me know if you can see this picture right here. So as soon as you guys can see it, please comment down below. Sound is good. That's good. Awesome. And it looks good. All right. Okay. So anyways, what we have right here is the first bike. This is a Trek, right? This is a Trek Mystic. In fact, this is a kid's bike. You might be thinking, wow, I thought we were going to be hustling adult bikes here. Well, in fact, I'm going to show you, I'm going to lead it off with a kid's bike, right? And this Trek Jet, hopefully you can see my mouse pointer too. This Trek Jet is, I think it's a 12-inch wheel one, so it's one of the smaller ones that they offer. This could be, yeah, I think this is a 12. I don't think it's the 16. It could be the 16, but anyways, yeah, this is basically the way that I found it. Usually when I find these bikes, they're going to be at garage sales, or they're going to be at thrift stores. Like typically, those are the two main places where you can source bikes. Now, pawn shops are a good place you can find bikes as well, but typically when I'm hustling a kid's bike, it's going to be coming from a Goodwill, or a garage sale. So anyways, the kid's bike, we know it's a step-through frame, so it's more than likely a girl's bike, right? It is a girl's bike. It's got a little basket in front, got tassels on the side. Nothing crazy. You want to look these things over, but for the most part, these are aluminum frame bikes. They're pretty light for a child, and they have some little bash protection right here, right on the stem and on the handlebar. So if the kid does go flying forward or whatever, at least it's not going to compound the damage to the face region, right? So this is what you'll typically find out there. And sometimes, every now and then when I find a Mystic or a Trek Jet or something like that, sometimes the rims can be overly rusted. I really wouldn't pick them up in that condition, but we can see in this condition, this is definitely a solid pickup. A bike like this, honestly, in Goodwills, will never be more than $15. And a bike like this, you could sell, at least in Austin, Texas, or any bike-friendly town, typically for $50 and above. So that's not too bad, right? $50 and above. So there's the Trek Mystic right there. Beautiful bike, right? And that's the condition of the tire. These are the stock tires as well. And these are the pictures that actually made it on Craigslist. So a $15 bike, this one sold for $50, so it's not a big deal. I've sold these as high as $70, but for the most part, single speed, coaster brake, 1 gear. Yeah, $50. I'm pretty happy with that. And it typically takes no more than a week to sell something like this. So there it is. Okay, so this is one of the most smashing bike hustles of my career, but it's a pretty good one. I thought it was pretty interesting. This right here is a felt chief. In fact, I owned this bike for 2 years before I sold it. Now, the story behind this one is I did find it off of Craigslist. I was just one day on my couch and sifting through the bike, part of Craigslist, and I noticed this thing, and I was like, oh wow, it's a felt chief. It's a 3-speed internal hub cruiser bike, and it's, I don't even, at that time that I looked it up, it was not produced anymore. So it's a really beautiful bike. Kind of looks like an old Indian motorcycle. And in fact, I mean, I think they kind of ripped it off of an old Indian motorcycle. They even have an Indian right here. So I thought it was pretty cool. I was like, $250 is what they were asking for it on Craigslist. And I was like, holy, that's a really, really, really good price for this bike, because brand new, 4 years ago or something, you might be able to find this bike for $500 or $600 for the most part. So a felt chief is super highly desirable, and in fact, it's even more highly desirable if it's not junked out and it's in this condition right here. Like, it's in really good condition. So a lady in Austin, Texas, was going to move to the coast, and she was like, I don't need to take my bike with me. In fact, I need money for hospital bills. And so I thought $250 was a pretty fair price. And in fact, I was just immediately in the car heading in that direction to go get this bike. And I rode it for 2 years. Not all the time, but I rode it for 2 years. It sat in my arsenal, in my bike collection, and it was a lot of fun. Brought it to some cool places. And this is what it looks like. It has a Nexus 3-speed internal hub. So anytime that you see a shifter that kind of looks like this, and has a 1, 2, 3, or maybe it has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that'll kind of dictate the gears. If it's on the right side of the handlebar, it'll dictate how many gears are on the rear part of the bike, right? And you can have gears on the front and rear, the front being where your cranks are, where you pedal, and there could be some gears behind, right where the rear wheel is. Sometimes the gears are exposed, and sometimes they're enclosed. And in this case, on this bike, they're certainly not exposed. In fact, it just looks like it has one gear right here, but that is false. It actually has 3 speeds. It's an internal hub. You don't get to see the other gears or the splines or anything else. So yeah, it's a Nexus 3-speed. It's a pretty good shifter made by Shimano. It has thick brick tires, which are actually 24-inch wheel tires, but the true diameter of these tires, once they're inflated and they're very balloony kind of looking, are actually about 26 inches. So it rides good. It rides a little slow, of course, because it's definitely very wide. I definitely didn't want to overinflate this bike tire. It's just one of those. It's kind of expensive to get your hands on some thick brick tires. Now I'm showing you something that's a little bit more on the harder to find side, but that doesn't mean you can't find it, because Felt, which is the manufacturer of this bike, makes a ton of cool models that really aren't produced anymore. But the Chief is just one of them. They make the MP, which is a military police looking bike. They make one called like the Iron Cross. They make one called El Guapo. There's all kinds of different ones that Felt makes, and they're really, really neat. So if you ever want to take a chance and see, or if you guys spare a second and you want to see more bikes made by this company, go to felt.com. I think that's what it is, felt.com. Look in their cruiser or urban biking section, and it'll land you on some of the neat cruisers that they have. But anything with a 3-speed hub, which is this thing right here, anything with a 3-speed hub is typically going to run you $500 or more on that website, and that's without shipping too. Okay, so I'm spending $250 on this thing. It's a nice steel frame bike. Has a little bit of rust right there, but you know what? I didn't even bother to take it off, because a little bit of patina or rust is not going to kill the sale price of this bike. It has a really comfy seat. Of all the cruiser bikes I've ever ridden, this one had the most comfortable seat. And here's the other side of it right there. Just a beautiful bike, honestly. I really took good care of this thing. And this bike sold for $900. $900. So think about that for a second. Yeah, 900. So I thought it was pretty cool. I knew what I was looking at, and I had several offers for $500 and $700, and I held out, and I held out for a couple more months for a really strong one. And the person that bought this thing was arguably a millionaire and just didn't care. He's just like, I really like the way that bike looks. I don't care about looking for any other bike. I just want that one. So $900. He took it up and down the street, like literally. I brought it downtown, and he brought it 4 car lengths down, turned around and came back. He's like, I'll take it. He's like, it's mine. I want it. So I thought it was a stellar sale. $900 in my pocket. That was pretty awesome. So anyways, here's a really cool bike. It's a little bit more typical of a bike that you might find at a garage sale or thrift store. This one was found at a Goodwill. And it was about a year ago, right? Goodwill about a year ago. This one, I believe, was $24.99. It needed some things, to it and everything like that. and that's okay, right? But it's a giant Yukon. It's a mountain bike, front suspension, aka also known as a hardtail, meaning the tail end of the bike right here has no suspension, so they consider it a hardtail. Front suspension, hardtail, good condition. You know, needs a little bit of grease in the gears, nothing crazy. And this is the condition that I picked it up in. I did a really quick once over, like looked at it, made sure it was good. It was good. Did have a fair amount of dirt and dust on it, so I had to clean all that off. But that didn't take much time. I think total involved in this bike, I'm going to have 10 or 15 minutes. And if you're wondering, like, that's great, I want to make money on some of this stuff, but I don't know anything about bikes. Well, I have a solution for you. It'll be at the end of this video, so don't worry about that. So there we go. That's what the front tire looks like. Front forks in Manitou. This places this bike in probably the early to mid 2000s because of that fork. It's an aluminum frame, which is good. Strong kind of brand. Giant's pretty good. The frame size already right here, 19 inches. And that's one of the things when you want to make money on bikes, you're gonna have to know some things and hot keywords to put into your listings locally. And one of those hot keywords will be the frame size. So whether you have a road bike or a mountain bike, they all have distinct frame sizes, and there's some differences between a mountain bike and a road bike, and the measurements that you have to give on Craigslist to get the right kind of buyer to give you a call. So that stuff is in my bike guide, which I'll show you, or I'll talk about a little bit at the end of this broadcast. So right here is some more pictures of that bike. Remember, 25 bucks. This thing actually sold for 140 about 2 weeks later. So not a bad hustle. Pretty awesome. The funny thing is they had another one that was in pretty bad condition. It was the sister bike to this. I would speculate that this was a rental bike because there was a 11 next to this one. There was a 14 next to the other one. So maybe a rental bike, or maybe some sort of bike that was like at a camp or at an off-road trail park or something like that. But either way, 25 bucks for this one. The other one was like 70 bucks, and it was the starting price on auction. I don't know how the two got separated and this one made it out to the sales floor, but this was it was in decent condition, and pretty good condition actually compared to that other one, which was really junked out, and they wanted 70 for that. So anyways, and the funny thing is someone bid on that one and took it, but this one here sold for 150 bucks. All right, what do we have next? This is an interesting kind of bike. This one I actually bought from the side of a garage sale that was on the side of a street, like 7 in the morning. Same garage sale. It was actually hosted by like what seemed to be homeless people, and I kind of had a kind of weird feeling like, oh man, like what if this is stolen or something like that? But the lady swore it was hers, and she was like, it's a good bike. I just don't need it anymore. And so I believe she sold it to me for 40 or 50 bucks. It was one or the other. So it has a shock seat post. Some of the interesting things about this, and this bike's called an urban commuter or urban cruiser, right? A little bit more upright kind of stance. Plus, if you want it more upright, you can adjust the stem, and you can rotate the stem even more to an upright position to take stress off your back, depending on what kind of style you want. If you want a little bit more racy feel to it and want to be a little bit more lean forward, these kind of stems right here, these adjustable stems will allow that. What's interesting about this bike is it has a shock seat post in the rear, which is really weird. So it's a hardtail, right? There's a hard rear triangle. There's no suspension in the rear, but there is suspension on the seat, which is kind of something you don't ever see typically on bicycles. We have a rack right here, which is good for bags. We have, fenders, which is good for running in rainy or muddy kind of conditions. And it has a front fork right here, a real basic front fork with limited customizable stuff. It's just a real basic kind of fork. It's a small frame. We can kind of tell by just this real small triangle. The wheels are really close together. And this bike right here actually sold for like 250 bucks. So that's not bad at all. And it really didn't need anything. It needed air in the tires, and that was pretty much it. What's cool about these SRAM shifters right here, and so let me kind of back up a little bit. So we can take a look at the handlebars right here. We have twist gears on that side. We have twist gears on this side. There are 3 gears on the front derailleur. There are about 8 gears on the rear derailleur. That last gear being really, really big compared to the other ones. And that's for hill climbing and stuff like that. People would call that a granny gear. So SRAM, which is I like SRAM a lot better than Shimano, but there are 2 basic companies that make shifters for bikes, right? Derailleurs for bikes. One will be SRAM, and the other one will be Shimano. Now, Shimano arguably is a much longer brand. It's been there for a long time. And SRAM's probably been there for about 10, 15 years or something like that. But SRAM is my pick for awesome drivetrains for the bikes that I ride. That's aside the fact. What we're learning today are just different styles of bikes, how you can make money on some of this stuff, where I'm sourcing these bikes from, and how to maybe not be afraid of pulling the trigger on your first bike and how to make some money on your first bike. All right, so right here we have a little bit more, a better picture of the rear rack, and these are exactly the pictures that made it on Craigslist to sell this thing. Where's the rear fender right there in good condition. The rack is also adjustable, as you can see right here. If you want to get that rack a little bit higher or lower, closer to your wheel, you can do that. Also, this is a, how do I say it? This bike has a kickstand, pretty cool, water bottle cage. No one really cares about that, but it's stuff that if you take a really good picture, people can definitely see that it has just about everything that they need. This is one of the pictures that I put on the listing right here, which shows it the 7 speeds for the SRAM 3.0 shifter. Really easy bike to work on. I want to say it has cable actuated rim brakes, so that's amazing. And yeah, $250. I thought that was pretty good. Okay, so this next bike is a kid's bike, and this is a 24-inch, what's called a Trek MT220. The MT really, I believe it stands for Mountain Trek. All right, so it's an MT220. It's in really good condition. Anytime you hustle a kid's bike, you kind of want to look at the seat and the overall condition of like the handle grips and tire condition, and really try to make sure that the front shock works, because a lot of times those will be the things that will go first, right? Or the kid will lay it down on concrete and go play with some other kids and pick it back up and lay it down again the next day, and eventually the seat gets a crack in it or ripping it or something like that. Sometimes the kids crash it all the time, so they'll get some really kind of crazy wear and tear. And then kids just go and jump and hop and do crazy kid stuff, and so sometimes the forks get they get seized, or they just don't work anymore. So anyways, this is a really good condition Trek MT220. I believe we picked this one up for $50. It sold for $100. And you might be thinking, like, how does a kid's bike sell for $100? Well, first of all, it's a strong brand. Second of all, believe it or not, an MT220 Trek typically at a bike store is going to run about $279 to about $319. That's for a new one. And you can look at the condition of this one and go, you know what? I think I kind of understand what's going on, right? I mean, the condition of this one's very, very good. So if you're a parent out there, your kid's probably going to destroy the bike. Like, why not buy it secondhand, right? What's interesting about this bike too is that the pedals are adjustable. As your kid grows, you can take this pedal out and put it to that over there. So there's some adjustability too, because a lot of times kids grow really, really fast, especially in this one stage with the 24-inch wheels. So this one was in really good condition. That was the stock tire in the back. And yeah, thought it was a really solid find. Has cable actuated rim brakes. The thing actually worked okay. The actual front shocks. There's a little bit of cracking on the dust seal, but honestly, the buyer would really never even care about that. They probably would never even see that. And here's another shot of the bike. These are the exact shots that made it on Craigslist. And this bike didn't last too long. Within a week, this one was gone. So Trek MT220. The other kind of kids bike that Trek makes is called a Jet. And there's a Jet 12, Jet 16, a Jet 20, and those you can look out for as well. Typically, when I find a Trek Jet, it'll be almost always at a thrift store. So definitely rifle through some of those cheap bikes at a thrift store in the front. You might see some Spider-Man bikes and some Mighty Morphin Power Ranger bikes. Like, ignore all those really, really bad bikes. In fact, anytime that you come up to a thrift store, you're probably going to be passing on 90% of the bikes. But 10% of the bikes at a thrift store are going to be really worth pulling the trigger on, so you can make some good money. All right. So there we go. Now, this is not a bike, right? But I wanted to educate you on something that was interesting. Let me answer a couple questions that are in the feed right now and bring it back here. What's going on? We have Sam saying, how quick is your typical turnaround time for a bike? Look, if you have a really good bike with a good entry point, a really solid, super awesome entry point, you're going to want to hold out a little bit and maybe draw it out so you can get full price for the thing. I can make the turnaround as fast as I want, but I can also, take $40 and multiply it into 80, and I could have the bike probably sold by tomorrow. Typical bikes that I pick up for $40. But I'm in the game for a little bit more than that. Typically, when I'm spending 40 or something like that, it's a bike that's probably going to sell for 100, 200, something like that, right? So I can make the turnaround as fast as I want, but the ROI, I'm looking for a really good ROI, obviously. So the longest I've ever had a bike has been like 6 months or something like that. The quickest I've ever sold a bike has been same day, right? What's the best time of year to sell bikes? From Kristen Frank. Here in Austin, Texas, we have bikes like year round, right? People bike year round, so it's an active type of town. Obviously, the summertime is a really good time to springtime, summertime, really good. But you can go to our Craigslist right now in the fall. Tons of bikes on sale. I mean, not on sale, but on Craigslist. So that's a good thing. I believe that's the other questions. We have Michael Razzo saying, "What's up?" Hey, not much. All right, let me go back to the screen share and get you guys some more information here on this next thing, which is not a bike, all right? This is a bike rack. Now, why is this here in this episode? Because a lot of people might go, well, I like bikes, but they're too bulky and I don't know what to do with them. I've always heard get a hitch rack, but I don't know how the hell they work or anything like that. Look, when it comes to transportation of a bike back to your house, it doesn't matter whether you have a hatchback or a normal trunk kind of car or an SUV or a minivan. A lot of times when you get into the bike trade and you start putting the bikes into your actual car or van or SUV, eventually things will get dirty, things will get ripped, and it's not good for your car's interior, period. So a lot of times it's better to just have a bike rack. Pick up a cheap one at the thrift store or something like that. This one right here was just a really weird fluke, but on a Sunday garage sales, decided to go out on Sunday, which I typically don't do. I went to some when there were no competition. I picked this thing up for 25 bucks. This happens to be the bike rack that I still use to this day. And this is a Thule 2-inch receiver bike rack, right? It's a tray. How do I call it? This is a platform style. They call it platform style, and you'll see here in a second why. But it looks like this. You put it into a 2-inch receiver in the back of an SUV, as you see right here. And here's my wife's bike on the back of that. There's my old bike rack right there, which is a swing away Yakima type bike rack. But I went to the platform style because I like it a little bit better. It doesn't make the bikes rattle on each other and stuff like that. But either way, you need to get a bike rack for the back of your car or truck or SUV, whatever. In fact, when we owned a Toyota Prius, I still had a bike rack for that. And you might be thinking, well, what did you do? Did you put something on the back window? Yes, I did for a while until I realized that it was starting to eat away paint and cause some damage to the back of the car. So I got a hitch mounted on my Prius at that time, and I put a $10 bike rack from a thrift store in the back, and that thing made me so much money, the amount of bikes I could take back home that didn't destroy my interior or the outside of my car. So there are two types of hitch mounts. This is the hitch receiver thing, right? The hitch receiver is sitting back there. Use the same thing that you put a hitch ball into and you can tow a boat or a trailer. That thing you can get, that receiver can accept a 2-inch or a 1.25-inch bike rack. And this one that you're seeing here is a 2-inch bike rack. So there's only two real, two measurements for that, right? This part right here is either 2 inches or it's 1.25. And you can figure out if you have a light duty SUV or a small car or something like that, you can get a 1.25 hitch bike rack hitch put onto your back of your car. It's like $100. And you can do it yourself too, which is what I did. Or, if you have an SUV that doesn't have one of these hitch things right here, you can get one put on as well. They're about $100. Installation a little bit easier because you can get under them a lot quicker. Okay, so that's what it looks like right there. This is what a platform rack looks like. This is actually my bike in the back of it. And a platform rack allows the bikes to stay side by side, and it has usually a hoop that goes over a wheel, or the hoop goes over the body of the bike, thus making the bike not able to shift on a lateral sense, right? So it keeps the bikes parallel and unscratched to each other. Okay, let's look at this next bike right here. This was a $40 pickup from a garage sale. This is a mountain bike, but the dude decided to take the mountain bike tires off and put some slick road bike tires on, or commuter bike tires on. So kind of a weird kind of combination, but nevertheless, I still spotted it in the back of a garage at a garage sale, and technically it was not for sale. And had it not been for me and asking a quick question, which is, hey, is that bike for sale? I would have never walked out with this one. But this bike right here I bought for $40. I was able to sell it for $120. And it's a pretty simple aluminum M600 hardtail, right? And there's the hardtail, which means it's a front suspension mountain bike. But this one, had slick urban tires, and the person that bought it did not even care. It was an extra large frame, so the person that did buy it was a kind of taller person. But if you want to see an example of a soft tail, right? Then here, so this would be a hardtail right here. You can see the rear triangle is hard. It doesn't bend. It has no suspension in the rear. And my bike, for example, has shocks right here, and there's a shock absorber right there for the rear triangle. So this is a full suspension bike right here. That's the difference right there. Anyway, so this is some close-ups of this one right here. This is probably a late 90s or late 2000s or mid 2000s mountain bike. It's an M600. It's a good bike, honestly. And nothing crazy. This is exactly the pictures. I mean, you might be thinking, well, why didn't you clean it up further? It's because it doesn't need to be cleaned up further. You just got to get it in operational condition and most of the dust off. And that's all it takes for this thing to land on Craigslist. And these are the exact pictures that made it on. I did try to take these dust boots and make sure that they mesh well with a shock, but that's all these things are. And a lot of times on bikes from the mid 2000s to late 2000s, you're going to see these dust boots, and that's all they are. They protect the shock shaft from dust. That's all they do. So typically they're supposed to rest right here on this little lip, but a lot of times they end up ejecting right off. So rather than be all frustrated and trying to mesh this thing perfectly, which it typically will never happen, just leave it off, right? And just take the pictures, and typically, figure out, the other person will figure out whether it's a big issue or not. Typically it never will be. So those are how skinny the tires were on this bike. Like I said, it's a little bit more of a hodgepodge Frankenstein type bike. This is a mountain bike with, urban tires on it. So something you don't see every day, but nevertheless, a good brand. Raleigh. Raleigh's a good brand. And that's another thing on my bike that I will definitely highlight is, bike brands and stuff, things to look out for. So there we go. Good pictures of that one. Here was a bike that I picked up for $30 at a garage sale. And honestly, this one I let sit around for 6 months till I got around for it because I just wasn't really pumped up about selling it. But this one right here sold for $60. It was nothing crazy. It was just a really quick flip. It was a quick flip when I decided to actually I just lost track of this bike in the back of my house. And one day I was like, oh, I need to list that thing. And 6 months later, I listed it. And yeah, doubled my money on this one. It's just straight vintage GT Karakoram Elite, which is probably a late 90s steel frame mountain bike. You can see how the tubing is really, really small on this bike. It's more than likely steel, which it is. It's Tange steel. There's a little marker that says Tange. This was a 20-inch bike, thus being an adult large. Pretty bad condition. It's been rained on and it's got some sun fade. Doesn't matter. You buy it for a good price, and I was able to sell it for $60. 6 months later, I probably should have, gone to the side of my house a little bit more to see this bike and gone, oh, yeah, I should have flipped that one faster, and I could have, but I just didn't, because other things were more important, obviously. But still, it just goes to show you that even with 6 months of wear and tear of the elements on it, it's still sold for twice what I paid for it. All right, here's a good flip right here. This one was found last garage, I think it was last garage sale season, last fall, not this fall, but last fall. This was an Electra Townie. This is widely considered to be probably the best urban cruising bike to date. This is just super comfortable. Anybody can ride it. Has rim brakes, has front suspension. The model that you're looking at, in fact, they probably make 6 different models of the Townie, right? Some will be fully rigid, some will have front suspension only, some will have a shock seat post, some will have one gear, some will have 3 gears, some will have 7 gears, and some will have 21 gears, right? So this one was a 21D. So it's basically the top, of the Electra Townie echelon right here. It says 21D here. The 7D will say 7D. I think there's a 3, definitely has a 1. But yeah, a 21D is great for towns that have hills and things like that. Now, this bike is kind of interesting. You might be thinking, it looks a little goofy. Something's off on this bike. Well, that's because on most bikes, and we can look back at this picture, you sit here, you pedal almost directly below you, right? So that's called normal pedal design. This one had what's called PFD, pedal forward design, right? You sit here, and instead of pedaling down here, you're pedaling forward of where you're sitting. PFD, pedal forward design. It's the reason why the Townie is such an easy bike to ride. And it's very, very comfortable once you're on it. But let's take a look at this Townie a little bit closer. Hey, look, one of those gears is really, really absurdly bigger than all the other gears. That's a climbing gear. That's also known as the granny gear. Hey, look, we have gears back here and we have gears up here. All right, so it has front gears and it has rear gears. Typically, when you want to figure out how many gears a bike has, take this number of gears that you see up here, multiply it times the amount of gears that you see back here. So if it's 21, it's more than likely 3 back here, 7 back here. And that kind of is important here and there sometimes. Every now and then, if I forget to put a speed, how many speeds the bike has, someone will be like, how many speeds does that thing have? I'll have to go out to, side of my house or whatever and count. Okay, I see 2 up here and I see 6 back there, so it's going to be a 12 speed. So anyways, this is an aluminum Townie, amazing bike. I bought this one for 90 bucks. 90 bucks, and it needed, I think it needed a spoke, right? The lady had it and it broke one of the spokes, so I got a spoke from the store and I installed it. It was really easy to do. And this one sold for $275, I want to say, or it might have been $3. It's one or the other. It could have even been as high as $350 because trust me, a 21D at a bike store is right around $570 to about $700. So it might have been $350. I'm not 100% sure, but I 100% know that I don't believe it was anything less than $275. But anyways, pretty nice bike. Typically the people that come by and check these things out, and this is made by a company called Electra, by the way, but typically the people that come and check these bikes out, they get on it for 1 second, it works perfect. I've yet to come across an Electra Townie that rides like hell. Like, they're typically ridden by people that are just not very hard on their bikes. They just want to cruise around. Then they get off the bike, they throw the kickstand down, boom, the bike just kind of rests there until the next time that they do the same exact thing. So, interesting kind of bike. Here's one that's interesting too. This was one Diamondback Delacruz. I picked this up at a garage sale for like 20 bucks. I was able to sell it for 50. Nothing crazy. This sold within 2 weeks. Single speed cruiser. Not the greatest brand, but for 20 or 25 bucks, 20 or 25, still picked it up, still sold for 50 bucks. Rip on the seat, nothing crazy. Good pictures. Hey, here's one that I actually sold not too long ago. This was sold, I think, 5 weeks ago or something like that. This is a Specialized Globe. Interesting kind of bike. It was picked up for $75, was it? I think it was 75 bucks, if I'm not mistaken. And this one actually sold for $250, I want to say. But yeah, this is an interesting kind of bike. It's made by Specialized. It was kind of like their attack to the Electra Townie, right? So if you're kind of going, hey, that kind of looks like an Electra Townie, well, you're right. And, instead of the pedals being right down below where you sit, hey, look, it's that kind of a pedal forward design. Has a shock seat post, interesting. Has front suspension, even more interesting. Step through frame, meaning you could have a dress on, a skirt on, or maybe you're just a lady that just can't pick up your legs that much, right? And you just want to get a bike ride in, because sometimes mobility can be an issue as you get older. A step through frame is very, very important. So anytime you see a frame like this, you should be thinking step through. You should be thinking women and ladies, right? If there was a bar all the way from here up here, then that would probably be a little bit more of a men's cruiser. Okay, so step through frames are typically women's bikes. We have gears in the front, gears in the back, interesting looking tires that just came with the Globe. That's just the stock tires that they come with. And as we take a look closer into this bike, we see a granny gear. That's pretty awesome. And we see 3 gears front, 7 gears in the back. And yeah, there's the shock seat post. It's called a Carmel. And the way I knew it was a Specialized Globe is it says Specialized right around here. It's a size small. And then the Globe was right here. It's kind of funny because you can actually put like a card or a picture like up here if you wanted to. But I thought it was a pretty solid pickup. I mean, I think it was like the asking price was $150, and it was like the tail end of the day at a garage sale. I believe I picked it up for 75 bucks, if I'm not mistaken. The guy was like, make me an offer, something reasonable. I was like, look, like, I don't, this is what I have for the bike. And I said one number, I said 75, and he's like, all right, you can have it for that. I was like, wow. It made me think, like, why didn't I, say less? But anyways, pretty solid pickup. You can't be mad when you take a $75 bike and sell it for $250, right? So that's what it looks like right there. There was some rust on certain parts of the bike, but who cares? I believe there was rust on this top handlebar right here. And I took it off with Barkeeper's Friend, which is another thing I kind of discuss in my bike guide as well. So pretty solid bike right there. And that is the last bike I wanted to train you guys on. So I did promise that I would talk a little bit about my bike guide, which is kind of cool. Slightly unprepared to do this, but anyways, I did put a 50% code. So if you've made it this far into the broadcast, there's a 50% code that after this video is live, I'm going to put it as the first thing below. I believe it's save 50 or something like. Anyway, I have to create the code, and I'll make sure to share it down below, but it'll only be on this video. So if you're interested in flipping bikes, and in the bike guide, Bikes to Bucks, we have not only different kinds of bikes to look out for, because you have to kind of know the styles of bikes to look out for. There's so many different ones. There's like urban commuting. There's fixie, single speed. There's, mountain bike. There's hardtail. There are cargo bikes, road bikes. I mean, there's just like so many touring bikes. So you kind of have to, being able to decode the bike once you roll up to it at a thrift store or a garage sale is like half the battle. Then next is knowing some good solid brands to be flipping. After that, you got to know, should I be picking this bike up in the first place? Because maybe it's a good bike, you know what it is. But like, what about a bike check? Like, how do you know that the bike is actually worth getting into, or it might be a little bit over your head? So there's a bike check in the bike guide that you can go look at. There's also a basic maintenance, almost to an intermediate type maintenance thing in the bike guide as well. So if you encounter certain things, you will actually be able to work on the bike should you need to. And on top of that, there's a part that discusses componentry, which is really interesting too, because componentry is one of those interesting. If you find a bike, and I have a perfect example of one 2 years ago, found a bike at a pawn shop. I believe I spent 60, I think it was $60 on it. It was like a vintage looking Raleigh, but it had a component set that was like worth $250 to about $300 on it. The components being the shifters, the hubs, the wheels, the brakes, and all. It had this really odd component set on there that I was like, dude, that totally does not fit the year of that bike. It was a modern day component set put on a vintage bike. So that was a 2-year-old. Anyway, that was 2 years ago. That bike was $60 from a pawn shop. The frame alone of that bike, right? Once I was done stripping everything down, the frame alone sold for like, what, 30 or $50. The components, all right, which is that part of the bike guide I'm talking about, being able to see and decode good components. The components sold for, I think, combined total of like $300. So it just goes to show you that if you know what you're looking for and you know how to decode it, then you know how, like, should I get into it or should I not get into it, and feel comfortable about, like, I know what kind of work is needed for this bike. Those are all things that are kind of involved in the bike trade or bike flipping. And you might be thinking, well, I'll just stick to my clothing, or I'll stick to my electronics and stuff like that. Just remember, the bike trade has almost zero returns, okay? Zero returns, and typically pretty hefty and big margins. But with that being said, about 60 or 70% of the bikes that I do mess with don't need much of any work, right? They might need tires inflated or a couple, wobbles taken out of the wheel. Nothing really crazy. But some of the other ones need a little bit more to gain all that money, out of it, or the ROI. So anyways, it is part of the bike guide. You can check it out down below. And stay tuned till after this broadcast. The very first line of the description, I will put a 50% off code, all right, for anybody that's made it this far in the broadcast that wants to pick up that guide for 50% off. So it's a $40 guide, sell to you for $20. Go check it out. Like I said, I mean, you could take the worst flip here, which was like a $30 flip that sold for $60, right? And that already had made me $30. And I've been flipping bikes for about 12 years, right? In fact, I even taught Steve Rakin how to flip bikes. So it's a lot of fun. It's a great kind of way to make money. And if you're in the green room, by the way, it is a free guide in the room. Okay, so don't buy it. If you're in the green room, just go on the site, go to the file section, find the guide. Do not spend money here and get it. But if you're not in the green room and you want to pick up the guide and you feel as if you live in a pretty strong kind of bike town, definitely check it out. You have to check it out. $20 off. It'll be $20. And yeah, it's a $40 guide, $20 off. Cost you $20. Think about it. I'll see you on the next Bonafide Hustler broadcast. That code will be down below in about 5 minutes. Go check it out. See ya. Bye.